Okay. I think we'll probably start then, if that works for everyone. So firstly, thank you so much for coming to join us. Thank you for giving up 15 minutes or so of your time. Hope you really enjoyed it. What I want to share with you is just a little bit of a thought piece around this proliferation of kind of these new available tech-driven insight tools and whether they really live up to this promise of delivering more for less. So I'll get into that in a second, but I think it's just worth right at the front establishing two things. Firstly, in no way is this a disparaging kind of comment about any of these tools. Many of these tools are ones we use every single day. They enable us to do our work better, and we're big fans. What it's intended to do, though, is to open a conversation about whether they are achieving everything that perhaps the belief, the hope that is that they can achieve, and just start a bit of an honest kind of dialogue about what the value is that we can get from them and how best to use them. Second point is that I haven't gone into a conversation about any of the specific platforms. We all know that the landscape has fundamentally changed within market research. I was looking at a website called insightplatforms.com the other day. If you haven't seen it, I highly recommend it. It's basically a site that kind of is effectively an encyclopedia of all the different tools out there. And when I checked yesterday, I think they had 810 different website platforms and tech tools that they review and kind of give a rating to. So I'm not going to talk to specifics, but the reality is we know that this is what is now normal. There are so many tools that are out there, and they're really kind of promising, if you like, the golden egg of let's have insight, but for half the price, in half the time, for twice the impact. I'm going to share a video in a second of Stan Stananathan, the EVP of Insight at Unilever, who put it much better than I probably can when he spoke at the MRS in 2016.
One of the common pushback that we used to get, and which we do get very often, is that you can have 2 out of those 3. Good and fast research that is not cheap, or fast and cheap research that is not good, but you can never get all 3. But in a world which is actually changing exponentially, the demand is that you need to get all 3. The inevitability that is facing us as client is that we are expected to deliver twice the impact at half the time and half the cost. That's
So there you go. The inevitability that we are expected as clients is to deliver twice as fast, half the time, twice the impact. Sorry, half the time, half the cost, twice the impact. And frankly, why wouldn't that be the case? You know, if I think about 10 years ago when I was first starting as a consultant, you know, I was probably flying halfway around the world, maybe not for a single IDI, that would be a bit excessive, but certainly a few IDIs or groups. Why would I do that now when from the comfort of my desk, I can have a digital one-to-one set up with any respondent, frankly, pretty much around the world at 30 minutes notice? It just doesn't make a lot of sense. So half the price, yes, absolutely. Half the time, 100%. Twice the impact? That's probably where there's a little bit more conversation, to be honest. And for us, it really comes down to how are we measuring impact? So if we find something out faster and cheaper, then that absolutely creates a form of impact. But for us, we need to move that conversation on when it comes to impact. It needs to be more than just efficiency of how quickly and how cheaply we find it. It needs to be a different conversation around impact, one around quality, where we're talking about insight being something that the business doesn't know already, that unlocks genuine, sustainable commercial advantage in growth. And that's really rare, frustratingly rare. And for us, there are a couple of reasons. The first one is what I don't need to tell anyone on this call about, the difference between information and data and insight. These new tools and techniques are unbelievable at giving us access, gathering, sorting, giving you answers from enormous data sets. You know, if you think about the human power required to trawl social media sites or big data, you know, it's just not feasible. But these new tools, these new algorithms do make that feasible. But information and data is not insight. If you're in, I don't know, a food and drink company, or you're just looking for the latest ingredient that consumers are talking about, then brilliant. These are fantastic ways to find that out. And if your supply chain is well set up and your R&D is efficient, you can probably get to market a little bit quicker than some of your competitors, and that will deliver a sales boost, and that is a form of impact. But I think we need to be careful to say that's not an insight. And part of the reason it's not an insight is because we need context. An insight requires context. We need to understand the why around the data and the information. And the truth is that if you know the latest in-demand flavor, your competitor probably does, and if they don't, they'll probably know it pretty soon. So any kind of advantage you might have is short-lived. It's not genuine commercial advantage. It's not long-lived. So don't get us wrong. An insight absolutely can't be built without data and information. It's fundamentally important. But just as important is it can't only be data and information. Data gathering is not enough. Sense making becomes really essential, which leads us to the kind of missing link. And the pleasing thing, we think, for all of us on the call is that it's us. It's the power of humans for sense making. We have an innate capacity for non-linear thought. We are able to question accepted norms. We're able to realize when rules have changed. We're able to make connections between things that don't make sense and form a kind of cohesive and complete picture of what actually is happening. And the truth is that even the most ardent AI supporter, an evangelist, will tell you that's not possible with AI yet. They are subject to algorithms. I was chatting with a guy who works for IBM on their AI business, is probably as big a cheerleader as you can get for the AI business. And he was completely candid. That's not what AI can do yet. One of the AI partners we work with, we use a lot, I think has got one of the best expressions of it. He talks about it as it can expedite the process, but it can't replace human thinking. So what do we do about that? Well, the truth is, as we all know, the pressure to deliver is intense. Whichever side of the desk you sit on, whether you're consultant side whether you're agency side or client side, there is just an insane pressure to deliver. We all know that. It's been growing for the last 10 years. And as Stan said, that is our normal. We have to get used to it. And delivery is important. We're not going to lie that. It would be a Luddite to suggest that delivery and that need for speed is not there anymore. We recognize that. But if the focus is just on delivery, then what this becomes is an in-tray exercise. It becomes impact as measured by efficiency rather than quality of insight. But what's pleasing is that we are starting to see some changes. So having said right at the beginning that I wasn't going to name check any particular business, look at that, we're only about 10 slides through and I've already contradicted myself. But I use Zappy here as indicative of the self-serve insight tools that are now available. And the reason that they're there and the reason that they're interesting is because what we're starting to see as businesses recognize that there are some questions that are there where actually data and information probably is enough for the business to be able to move forward. Is it A or is it B? Do I go with this copy or that copy? Do I choose concept 1 or concept 2? Actually, the role for human sense making, for that non-linear thought, is fairly muted, it's fairly minimal. These are challenges where efficiency actually does become the metric, where speed and cost and just getting the answer quicker into the business, that matters. But that's not all projects. And the reason we're starting to see businesses doing that is because they recognize that actually it can free people up to focus on the bigger, more exploratory challenges, where data and information are a critical input, but they're the start point. They're not the end point. Actually, sense making, humans' ability, the brain power, that's what creates commercial advantage. That's what gives you competitive edge and sustained competitive edge going forward. So what do we do about that? Well, I think we need to be really, really honest about what we can achieve. We have amazing opportunities now to deliver insight faster, cheaper, and with more impact than ever before. But I think we're kidding ourselves if we think we can achieve all three all of the time. I was at a conference last year and there was a panel with some clients and some agencies. And someone was stood at the top, on the panel and saying he felt really uncomfortable with this notion that there were exploratory projects versus kind of more evaluative pieces of research. And I couldn't disagree more, to be honest. I'm deeply uneasy if we don't admit that truth. Because if we don't, then we fall into this trap of believing that all projects are born equal, and therefore that we can achieve the holy trinity of half the speed, half the cost, twice the impact on every project. I really don't believe we can. Half the speed and cost, absolutely. You can create a really strong impact through efficiency, but doubling the impact in terms of quality, of bringing in that new understanding, that new insight that unlocks growth that a business didn't have before, that's only going to be achieved if we're prepared to invest in those human skills and give that time and focus to actually challenge some of those norms and really get into that non-linear thought. I'm going to leave you with two thoughts. Efficiency has a flaw. And I mean a flaw as in a level of flaw, not a fundamental problem. Of course, all you have to do is look at the unit pricing of anything, qual or quant, and you can see that price has just fallen off a cliff over the last 10 years. But there will come a point at which the price can't go any lower, that the time you can get to do it can't come any quicker. But impact, as measured by quality, that has no ceiling. There is no potential limit for that. And that's what we think will really drive that sustained commercial advantage.